All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. So, just a quick heads up if you are new to the office hours, I start answering questions that were posted up to an hour before. So, if you were on here more than an hour ago and you posted a question, go ahead and just copy and paste your question in there, and then I'll get to it as we go through the office hours. The reason why I do that is because when we send out the email, the notification email that office hours are going to be starting in an hour, that's an hour before. So I can reasonably assume that the people that are asking the questions up to an hour before are going to be here to see their questions get answered. And it's not going to be someone who just posted their question and then isn't going to be here to see their answers to see their questions get answered. So that's the reason why I do that. So if you are here, you posted your question before, it would be 2 p.m. Eastern time, just repost it in there and I will answer it. So Philip L says, he started with him. Says, how come I can swing my 9-iron 94 miles per hour and my 5-iron barely 90 miles per hour? Is it a common to cast with longer clubs? Philip, it's really impossible to say why you would be swinging your 9-iron faster than your 5-iron. It's possible that you could be casting your 5-iron and not your 9-iron. Sometimes people do different things with different length clubs. Because it's longer and it makes them react in a different way, or it weighs has a different swing weight, and so on and so forth. So sometimes that happens. It's usually not between like a 9-iron and a 5-iron, though. It's typically like your driver and all the other clubs in your bag, because the driver is so much longer than all your other clubs. You think about your typical driver that you get off the shelf. If you were just to go to Dick's Sporting Goods right now and buy a driver right off the shelf, most of them are going to be about 45 and a half inches. And that's nowhere near the length, of your 5-iron or your 9-iron or your wedge. It's like a whole 12 inches longer. So that would be the reason why we see that sometimes. And sometimes we do different things with the club because of the way that we hit it. When we're hitting down on a ball on the ground versus up on a ball on tee, sometimes our brain kind of thinks about that differently and we react to it differently. Usually there's not a 9-iron and 5-iron. There's not a huge enough difference there to see that. So I would actually have to see a side-by-side video of what's going on there. So sorry, Philip. I wish I could help more, but I'm not really sure. What I would recommend doing is I would actually do exactly that. Take a 9-iron video and then take a 5-iron video and compare them. See what's going on. See, maybe you don't get a big enough. Maybe you don't get a big shoulder turn with the 5-iron. You do with the 9-iron. Maybe you are casting with the 5-iron and you're getting lag with the 9-iron for some odd reason. Maybe there's all kinds of things that could be going on there. Maybe you swing the 5-iron kind of over the top, and maybe you swing nicely on plane with the 9-iron. It's really hard to say without seeing your swing, but I would recommend taking a video of each face on and down the line and actually compare them. If you use an app like V1 Golf, you can actually compare those two things, and that's a completely free app. It does have in-app purchases, but you don't need it to look at your swing on video. Just purchase the free app, opt out of the premium or whatever they call it. You don't need it to look at your swing, and compare the videos. See what's going on. Compare them side by side. You can use the compare feature in there to compare two swings side by side. So that's what I'd recommend doing. But like I said, sorry, I wish I could help more, but it's really impossible for me to say. All right, so David F. says, talk about releasing the club by rolling the forearms over versus turning the body to complete the release. So you're actually going to be rolling the forearms in both. It's just a matter of how much you roll versus how little you roll. You still want to be opening the body either way. Now, the way a lot of the way a lot of amateurs square the face is by not rotating and bringing the club in front of their body and rolling the hands over like that. That's how most amateurs, I would say, are doing that. The way most tour players are doing it is they're coming in and they're rotating too. They're just not doing it as much, and they're squaring the face. Now you'll see some tour players that roll their hands over more through contact, and some that have more of a square, what they would call kind of a square release. So what that means is the rate at which this face rotates is faster for some players, where it is slower for other players. For most amateur players, it's going to be pretty fast because of it's an early release. Typically, if you have a slow, what they call closure rate, which is the rate it's measured and how fast you close this club face. Typically, amateurs are going to have a high closure rate, a fast closure rate, because they release the club early. And when you release the club early, you have to flip the hands through, and really fast. The face goes from open to close very quickly to get that ball to square up. Otherwise, you won't be able to square up the face. So typically, with an amateur player, you're going to see a fast closure rate. But sometimes you'll see fast closure rates with tour players as well as slow closure rates. So there's advantages and disadvantages to each, and they're basically opposite of each other. So if you have a fast closure rate, you're actually going to be able to have more club head speed because the toe of this club is moving faster than the heel of this club or the center of this club. So if you're coming through contact and that face is moving faster through contact, it's rotating faster through contact, it's going to give you a little bit of extra speed. The disadvantage to that is that your face is going open to close very quickly. It may be a little bit harder to time. You may have, it's possible you might be a little bit less consistent. So that's the disadvantage. The advantages of a low closure rate or more of a slow or more of a square release, as you would say, is that the face is going from open to close very slowly. So it might be a little bit easier at time. Your margin for error might be a little bit higher, but the club is going to be moving slower. You're going to lose speed when you do that. So an example of someone who has probably a high closure rate would be Rory McIlroy. He comes in, he's got lots of speed. He's rolling these hands over, but he has forward shaft lean. So he's coming in like this, and he has a high closure rate as he's coming into contact. So this face is more like this, and then it comes into contact with a closed face and then rolls over. If you look at someone like a Jordan Spieth, a Lee Westwood, Angel Cabrera, guys like that, they have more of a squared release, where this club face is it's pretty square right here. It's not toe up so much. It's pretty square right here. And then there's not a lot of closure into the golf ball, and it stays pretty square after contact. So it's still going from open to close. It's just happening a lot slower than someone who has a rolled release. So what I would recommend doing is not changing that. Whatever you do naturally is what you should stick with. That's what I'd recommend doing. It's not something that there's pros and cons to each, right? So whatever you're doing, it's not going to be worth the effort to try and change what you're doing. What I'd recommend doing is just focusing on the release of the club as far as where the club is releasing, not how much you're rolling the hands through or not rolling the hands through, but where you're releasing the club is the most important thing about the release, not your closure rate. That's one of the least important things, because like I said, you can have a fast closure rate and you can get more speed from it. You get the benefit from that, but you might be a little bit less consistent. Like Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods. Those are guys that have rolled releases, faster closure rates than people like Jordan Spieth, Lee Westwood, Angel Cabrera. They have slower closure rates most likely. I mean, I don't know for sure. I'm just basing this on what I've seen in their swings. I never actually seen numbers on their closure rates, but just based on the kind of the release that they're having. So typically when you see someone who's got, Brooks Koepka would be another guy that comes to mind. When you see someone who's kind of, their elbow is kind of bowed like this as they're coming through contact, and you're seeing they're kind of holding the club like this. So that's going to look like a Brooks Koepka, Angel Cabrera, Jordan Spieth. And the club is not, the elbow isn't rolling under like this, like that. When it's staying out like that, that's usually an indication that it's more of a squared release of the club. So closure rate is going to be slower. They might be a little bit more straighter with the ball, but that's not as important as working on the release, where you're releasing the club. So that's what I would focus on, especially amateur golfers. Now, if you are a very high level player and you are really having trouble with your consistency because your closure rate is so high and you're releasing the club out in front, and you're nailing all the pieces of the Top Speed Golf system, you're doing the move, you're doing everything, 95% of the issues are solved with your technique, but it's just you want to switch to more of a squared kind of finish, then have at it. You're going to lose a little bit of speed probably, but have at it, go for it. But if you are, which I think 99.9% of people that are on the website or probably watching this office hours, probably more like 100%, don't need to worry about that at all. Don't need to worry about the rolled release versus the square release. We all probably need to be worrying about where that club is releasing, and that's the straight line release course. That's worrying about that. The straight line release, that's where we're worrying about where the butt end of the club is pointing as I'm coming through contact. Now I want that to be pointing straight into my sternum, so splitting my forearms here about 45 degrees out in front. Most people are releasing that club more like in this area, 10, 15 degrees out in front of the golf ball. The first point where we're looking from face on, the first point where we come in and we see that club splitting the forearms is going to be right here. So that's what you need to be working on. If you get it to where it's releasing more out in front, that's going to result in better contact, more forward shaft lean. That's going to result in lots of other things. But that's the last piece of the top speed golf system, and there's a reason why it's the last piece, is because everything else needs to be in order first. Because if you don't have a stable fluid spine, you're not going to be able to release this club out in front. If you don't have your spine angled away like you need to in the straight line release course, in the stable fluid spine course, you're just not going to release that club out in front. If your spine is vertical, if you're coming into contact and your spine is in this kind of angle, if you look at the center of my hips, center of my shoulders, I'm maybe 10 degrees angled away. I need to be 20 degrees angled away. I need to be more like in this area here. If you look at a more angled away as I'm coming through contact, you look at every single tour player, they're basically in that area. So that's where you need to be at when you're looking at your swings on video with your spine angle. You need to make sure that you're getting a good shoulder turn. Now, you may be able to release this club out in front without a good shoulder turn, but man, you're not going to have any power to do that with. Your biggest source of power is your shoulder turn. So make sure that you're getting that good 90-degree shoulder turn. If you're not getting lag, you basically have 0 to no chance of being able to release that club out in front. I've seen a handful of swings of people who cast the club and still release the club out in front. A handful. I can count on one hand how many. It's probably not even, I think 3. I think I've seen 3 swings in my life, and I've looked at hundreds, if not thousands of golf swings, probably more like thousands of golf swings, and I've only seen 3 in my life where someone has been casting the club and still was able to release the club about 45 degrees out in front. So if you're casting the club, you basically have no chance of releasing that club out in front and having a proper release. So that's a big one. You got to be able to get some lag in the downswing. If you're releasing from here, it's going to be, that club's already releasing. It's going to be releasing early. So the only people that I've seen be able to cast the club or were able to get some really good rotation to continue to rotate through contact to get to release out front. But even then, when we worked on getting some lag, they got more speed and they got more compression at contact. So big deal there. You want to be able to do that. And then you also need to have a compression line. If your hip is bumped out like this, so compression line, if you're not familiar with what that is, if you're new to the site, our compression line is a line that goes from our lead shoulder, our lead hip, our lead ankle. At contact, we draw this line as closely related to your spine angle as well. But we want that line to be angled away from the target just a little bit and all in a straight line. If I'm bumped out like this, I can't really rotate when I do that. And if you're not rotating through contact, you will not be able to release this club out in front. So that's one mistake that I see people often make, is that they see that they're not releasing the club. They see that that's the thing that jumps out to them in their golf swing. That's the worst part of their golf swing. And they jump straight to that straight line release course and work through that. You're going to have a hard time if you're not nailing all those first 4 pieces first. So make sure that those first 4 pieces are in order first. Your stable fluid spine, your power turn, your lag, and your compression line. Make sure that all of those are good first before you go into the straight line release courses. If you do that, it'll be so much easier to get that straight line release. It's going to be tough still, but it's going to be so much easier if you get those first 4 done. If you don't have those first 4 pieces down, it's going to be, I don't want to say impossible, because I mean, it might be possible, but man, it's going to be tough. You're making it a lot more difficult on yourself doing that. So that's what I'd recommend doing. But yeah, don't worry. I wouldn't worry so much about the rolled release versus the square release. That's probably too far in the weeds for 99.9% of people. We need to worry about the actual where the club is releasing, not whether the closure rate is too fast or too slow. That's not an issue that most likely needs to be worked on. All right. So Nicholas P, looks like he's got a couple things here. Says, ignore my question on compression line as there is a video in level 2. I didn't see your question. Maybe it was posted quite a bit earlier. But anyway, better question. How do we ensure we are swinging from the inside? Are there any tests and ways to measure it? I own a SkyTrack and can't see my path numbers. I do hit the ball better when my hands are traveling down. That's a feel and transition. So basically, yeah, SkyTrack only measures ball data. So, it doesn't measure what the club head is doing. It only measures what happens to the golf ball after you hit it. So unfortunately, it does give you club head speed, but that's a back calculated club head speed. They have an algorithm in there, from my understanding anyway. They have an algorithm in there that gives you club head speed based on what your ball speed is and what the spin numbers and what club you told it you were hitting and so on and so forth. So the club head speed numbers can sometimes be taken with a grain of salt because they're not actually measuring your club head speed. They're measuring other things and then trying to calculate that. And what I found, I've used the SkyTrack a few times. It measured my club head speed super low, like 10 miles per hour lower than what it actually was. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The way that you can look on video to see, kind of get an idea of what your club path is. And you can also, if you know ball flight laws, you can see if you're not hitting on SkyTrack, you can kind of be able to probably see if you're hitting on SkyTrack if it's accurate. But if you know ball flight laws, you can know kind of what your club path is. So first, let's talk about the method of being able to see it on video. So the first thing you want to do is take a down the line video. What a down the line video is, that's basically, for those of you who aren't aware, it's just a video where the camera angle is shooting kind of down your toes. You want to make sure that you're set up down your toes. If you're set up down the target line, it's going to skew the angle, and it's not going to be a true measure of your club path. So make sure that you are set up down, basically right down your toes. The easiest way to do that is just to take a club or an alignment stick, set it on the ground, point it at a target, and then set the camera up to where it's shooting right down that club or alignment stick. And then when you go to line up to the ball, have your hands directly above that club or alignment stick. Like if you were going to drop something on the ground, it would land right on that alignment stick. That'll give you the perfect camera angle. So waist high, far away enough that you and the club can stay in the entire frame, and right down the toes basically is going to be a really good spot to be able to see this. So what you do is use an app. You can use slow motion video as well on your phone. Use an app like V1. There's other apps out there. I haven't tried any of them. But I know there's other apps that do swing analysis, but we use V1 Golf here at Top Speed Golf. But what you can do is you can take your swing and you can pause, right? Try to pause as close to impact as possible. If you have a good camera on your phone, which most phones, newer phones these days have good cameras, probably has a slow motion on it, you can pause it pretty darn close to where that ball is. So now if you come into contact, I've paused it right at contact. Use your analyzer tool and draw a line straight down the shaft. And then what you can do from there is you can actually rewind it, keep that line there, and then rewind the swing to see where that club is coming down in relationship to that line. That line is virtually your swing plane if you have the correct camera angle. So if you can see if this club is, if my line is, let's say my line's right here where this club is, if my club's working like this, that's an in to out kind of swing. If it's working like this above that line, it's going to be an out to in kind of swing. If it's working relatively close to that line, it's going to be relatively on plane. Now, it's not going to tell you it's this many degrees, that many degrees, but it's going to tell you, okay, am I in to out, out to in, or am I on plane? It's going to give you a relatively close example. Now, that's what I use when I'm looking at students if we're working on swing plane and stuff like that. What you can do is learn some ball flight laws And if you learn some ball flight laws, it's fairly easy to understand. So number one, the ball is always going to start mostly in the direction of the club face, meaning wherever this club face is pointing at contact, that's where the ball is going to start. Mostly. It's not 100% in that direction, but just for the sake of simplicity, right now we're just going to say it starts in the direction of the club face. So if I'm a right-handed golfer, my face is open, my ball's starting to the right. If I'm a right-handed golfer, my face is closed, my ball's starting to the left. So if you see where the ball starts, then you can know if you have the face open or closed or not. Simple enough. And in order to do that, you need to be aiming at a target. You can't just aim. You just can't hit aimlessly into a field of nothing, right? Pick a target out there on a driving range or wherever you are. Pick a target, and wherever your face is in relationship to that target, open, close, whatever. Okay, so the ball is always going to start mostly in the direction of the club face. That's rule number one. Rule number two is that it will then curve away from the club path. So meaning if my face is square and my club path, the club path is the direction the club head is moving through contact. The direction it's moving. Club face angle is the direction it's pointing. Club path is the direction it's moving. So it's either when someone says they're swinging into out or out to in, they're talking about the movement of the club head. So if I'm swinging, if my face is square at contact and I'm swinging in to out, that means that my path is out to the right. In to out would be to the right for a right-handed golfer. Then my ball is going to start straight, and then it's going to curve away from the path. Where was my path? My path was out to the right. So it will start straight and then curve away from the path, which would be to the left. Now, this isn't 100% true. There are some percentages in there in the direction that it starts, but for simplicity's sake, it's pretty darn close to what I just said. And if you understand that, make it simple, it's a lot easier to understand what's going on. Now, the bigger the difference you have between your face and your path. Let's put numbers on it. If my face is dead square and I'm swinging 10 degrees into out, meaning my club head's moving 10 degrees out that way, that's a pretty big into out degree range there. There's going to be a hefty amount of curvature on that shot, right? Whereas if my face is square and my path is 2 degrees into out, there's going to be less curvature on that shot. It's going to be a nice little draw, a couple yard draw is what that's going to end up being. So the bigger the difference you have between your face and your path, the more curvature you're going to have on the shot. The smaller the difference between your curvature and your path, the less curvature you're going to have on the shot. If my face is square at contact and my path is also right at the target, I'm not going to have any curvature on my shot. Now, all that being said, there's a caveat in there. All that being said, this is all assuming center face contact. So if you hit the ball in the center of the club face, you can boil everything down into face and path. Makes it very, very simple. So if you don't hit it in the center of the club face, this adds another, it's just going to take some experience seeing shots that you hit off the toe and off the heel and what happens with them. So what happens when you hit it off the toe is the face actually twists open a little bit. So the face will twist open. So here I am, I'm coming in, I'm hitting the ball. You can see it hits the toe and the face opens up. Now, when the face opens, the ball is going to start more to the right, correct? So the ball will start more to the right for a right-handed golfer. Now, what also happens, depending on how far you hit it off the toe, is something called gear effect. So what happens is that when you have gear effect, the ball compresses on the face, and then it will tend to want to roll toward the center of the club face. So that puts this right to left kind of spin on it. If you're a right-handed golfer, you hit a ball a little bit off the toe, it's typically going to have a right to left spin on it. It's going to draw. So that's why it kind of throws a wrench into this whole thing. If I hit a ball with a fade swing and I hit it a little bit off the toe, it may end up going dead straight. It may end up being a dead straight shot. Whereas if I hit a ball with a draw swing and I hit it on the heel, because it's the opposite sensation for the heel, it may end up going straight as well. So if I hit the ball on the heel, the face will close a little bit, which will make the ball start a little bit more to the left for a right-handed golfer, and then it'll want to fade to the right. So if you use like foot powder spray, strike spray, if you use impact tape, if you use what I call the dot method, which the dot method, if you're not familiar with that, very, very easy to do. You take a ball, get a dry erase marker, or something, washable marker, put a heavy dot on the golf ball, and then set the ball up. You can do this with range balls. Set the ball up to where that dot's going to rub off on the face when you hit it, and then it'll leave a little smudge on your club face telling you where you strike it. So what you can do is use the dot method, use foot power spray, use whatever you want to see the strike on the face. Hit the ball, watch where it started and what happens afterwards, what way it curves, and then look at the strike on the face. If it's a center strike, then you can just think about it in the terms of face and path, and you can think, okay, the ball started straight, but it curved to the right a little bit. So that means that my path is a little bit too much to the left. Now on this one, I'm going to feel like I swing more to the right to straighten it out. That's what you can do. Now, if you see the strike is off the toe, then on the next one you need to think, okay, I'm going to do the same thing, but I need to feel like I hit it in the heel a little bit more to get that strike in the center of the face. Your goal is to get it in the center of the face first, and then you can boil it down to face and path. So that's kind of, I know that's a lot of information. That seems like maybe for some of you, it's like my brain just exploded or something like that. I know it's a lot of information. When I first went through that, and it was a lot of information, but what's really cool is TrackMan actually has some free education where you can go and they're going to explain it to you a lot better than what I just did. There are going to be illustrations. There's going to be some cool videos watching this stuff, and you can check that out. It's called TrackMan University. It is 100% free. And if you understand that they've got courses that you can go through where you learn, that's just basic ball flight laws, what I was talking about there. But they also tell you, stuff about environmental conditions, what's going to happen when it's more humid outside, how much further does the ball carry when it's hot outside, things like that. There's all kinds of cool stuff in there, the pressure in the air, all that good stuff. I highly recommend going and checking it out. It's super educational. If you ever wonder about that thing, and I think it really helps with your golf game. If you understand why your golf ball is doing what it does, because that's the most important thing, what your golf ball does, the result of the shot, then you can understand what it is and why you need to do it. So I'd highly recommend checking that out. Just do a Google search at TrackMan University. It's 100% free. Go through the courses. They test you at the end. And that's what I'd recommend doing. You can know ball flight laws and how to see those things. You don't need a TrackMan. Having these machines, these launch monitors, they're really nice. It's really good to see like the exact numbers. But trust me, Ben Hogan, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, the list goes on of all the all-time greats. They didn't have TrackMan, and they were just fine. They did really, really well, and that's because they understood the physics of what was going on, and they knew how to change their swing to get what they wanted, and that's all you really have to do. So that's what I would recommend doing is understand that. Now, if you don't have, obviously, if you're hitting out of your garage, you can't see the ball flight, so having something like a TrackMan or Flight Scope or SkyTrack or whatever it might be to give you a little bit of data is pretty cool to have, but it's not necessary to know what's going on at impact if you understand the physics of what's going on. Now, as far as I rambled on for a little bit there, I do apologize, but I wanted to let you know that you can go learn all this stuff and be leaps and bounds ahead of your buddies or your gals that you play with. You're going to know a lot more than them, and you're going to be in much better shape. So as far as getting the club more on plane, it's first going to come down to your spine angle. I know I talked about spine angle initially here, your stable fluid spine. We want to have our spine angle tilted away. If I'm more tilted toward the target or vertical, what am I going to want to do with that club? I'm going to want my trail shoulder is going to want to go out like that. This is an over-the-top kind of motion. If I'm angled away, if I'm more in this kind of position, now I can swing from the inside much more easily. I can swing and I can get this club nicely on plane. So it's really, really important to have that spine angle angled away. That's one of the most important things for getting your club path in the right direction. So I'd be looking at that. Now, I'm working with someone right now in my swing reviews that's on the opposite end of the spectrum. I don't see it very often, but sometimes you get to where you're too far angled away. I got a guy in swing reviews that's like this. He's angled away like 14 degrees at address. It's just what feels comfortable for him. It's what he's done probably for a long time. And he hits a really, probably a trap draw, a lot of trap draws and things like that. But it's really, really hard to be consistent when you swing so much into out. Not to mention it's a little bit hard on your lower back too. But if you're really, really angled away, now I'm going to be swinging too much from the inside, and I might hit a bunch of snap hooks or blocks out to the right, things of that nature. So getting that spine angle in that 6 to 8 degrees angled away at address, you can measure this with the V1 app. It's very, very easy. 6 to 8 degrees at address. Now, you don't have to be 6 to 8 degrees at address. The most important thing is being in that 19 to 25 degree angle at impact. It's just easier to get into that position if you're 6 to 8 degrees at address and a little bit angled away at the top. If you are vertical at address and then vertical at the top, it's just harder to get into that position. It's not impossible. I've seen it sometimes, but it's just a lot more difficult to do that. So much easier if you just set up angled away, get angled away at the top. And that's what we see with most tour players and what they're doing. So highly recommend working through that stable fluid spine course. That's definitely going to help you. Now, if your spine is good and it's a matter of just everything wants to go that way or drop way underneath, you'll want to work on either if you're coming over the top, your club path is over the top out to in, then you're going to want to work on our Never Slice Again course. And if it's the opposite, everything's way too much underneath, you're going to want to work through our Never Hook Again. Both of those courses are about getting you to swing correctly on plane. So slices and pulls are really a product of an over-the-top, out-to-in kind of motion. Hooks and blocks are a product of a too much in-to-out kind of motion. So both of those courses are to help with that. So to get to any of the courses on the website, super easy. If you want to get to stable fluid spine, if you want to get to any of the Top Speed Golf system, we have 20 plus courses on the website to check out to fit all of your needs that you might have with your golf game, putting, chipping, whatever it might be. Just go to the house icon at the top of the page. It's just a little tiny house. That's going to take you, if you click on that, that's going to take you to the home page. On the home page, if you scroll down, you'll see a list of all the courses. It says Top Speed Golf System course progress. You'll see that, and then you'll see a list of all the courses on the website. Check them out. Think about what you really need to work on and go to those pieces. Well, we recommend you stick with the Top Speed Golf system. If you're looking for distance, go to the 20-minute distance fix. If you're looking for forward shaft lean and compression, go to the Move. If you're looking to improve your short game, we have the putting system. We have the chipping mastery. We have the wedge system. Go through those courses. But yeah, that's what's going to help you the most to start improving. All right, so keep posting your questions here. Looks like we got several, so I will get to them as quickly as I can here. So Matthew S. says, Haiku playing golf this Saturday and is expected to be 40, 50 miles per hour. Any tips on whether the ball tee height should change in these sort of conditions? Matthew, I'd recommend staying home, to be honest. 40, 50 mile per hour winds, I don't even know how you're going to stand it. The ball's going to be moving on the green 40, 50 mile per hour. You're a trooper. I wouldn't be caught dead out there, 40, 50 mile per hour winds. Tee height, that's a tough one because basically when you're hitting the ball in the wind, you want low spin because any kind of spin that's on the ball, what's really, really important when hitting the ball in the wind, that's more important than anything else, is hitting the ball in the center of the face. There's nothing more important than hitting the ball in the center of the face. If you hit the ball in the center of the face, you can hit down on it, up on it, whatever you want. It's so much more about hitting it in the center of the face. That's the best advice I can tell you. Because when you hit it off center, what happens is basically that tilts your spin axis. So the ball will spin on an axis, and it's like the wings of a plane, okay? So if you hit it off a different part of the face, not in the center, the wings of the plane are going to get tilted right away. Those wings of the plane want to get tilted. And if you have wind out there, it's going to, if it would normally just, fade 10 yards, if you have wind in your face, it's going to exponentially increase how much that's going to curve. So you get a little bit off with your tilt, it's going to go haywire. So do whatever you need to do. However, if teeing the ball lower helps you hit more in the center of the face, then do that. If teeing the ball higher helps you hit in the center of the face, then do that. Everybody's a little bit different. but tee it whatever height you need to get that strike in the center of the face. That is the most important thing when playing in the wind. If you don't hit in the center of the face, you're usually dead. It's usually going to be, especially if you're hitting into the wind, it's going to be super difficult. So that's my best advice. Hit it in the center of the face. You're with the driver. If you tee it lower, right, that's typically going to add spin, but it's going to go lower. But when you add spin, it's typically going to go shorter. Whereas if you hit it higher in the face, it'll launch higher, so the wind will knock it down more, but it'll have less spin. So there's really, as long as you're hitting it in the center of the face, you can do either or. I would do whatever works best for you. I don't know if it's quite equal in how between which one's best as far as controlling it, but as long as you are hitting it in the center of the face and you're not getting that tilt, they're going to go roughly the same distance into the wind. So if you got the wind behind you, get it up in the air. Get that ball up in the air, high launch, low spin it. Let that wind just carry a knuckler out there and get it as far as you can. But into the wind, I would just be trying to hit it in the center of the face as much as you possibly can. Maybe choke up on the driver a little bit. So if you choke up on the driver, if that gives you a little bit more control and allows you to hit it more in the center of the face, highly recommend doing that, because it's going to kill your distance when you hit it off center, especially into the wind, and it's going to blow if it's 40, 50 miles per hour, man. I've never played in winds that high. 20, 30 is about the highest I think I've ever played in. Maybe gusts a little bit higher than that, but I've never played in 40, 50 sustainable. I mean, that's crazy. So good luck with that. But yeah, just trying to hit it in the center of the face as much as humanly possible. That is the most important thing, especially in high winds like that. All right, so Brian C. says, I'm having difficulties rotating the hips from the backswing position to the impact position. From reviewing my swing, it appears I reach my full backswing position, then have an extra swing motion to try to generate momentum to rotate my hips. Clay has a few videos with different approaches, squatting, turning both knees, and pushing down in the front leg. Any suggestions and drills to fix this? So, Brian, it's hard to say exactly what's going on in your swing without actually seeing it. But I will tell you the number one thing that I see with people who can't rotate their hips, it's not necessarily because they're, the way that they use their legs or things like that. A lot of times it's because of the position of the club and the way that they square the club face. So let's go over what the position of the club is. The position of the club is if this club is steep. If this club is steep, I can get to my lead side all I want and try to rotate all I want. But if I have this club steep, if I rotate my body, I'm going to go like that. I'm going to swing over the top and chop down into the ball. Intuitively, most people aren't going to do that. So what most people are going to do when this club is steep is they're going to push into the ground and they're going to stand up and kind of thrust their hips toward the ball a little bit. That raises the handle, which drops the head. Now that club's on plane again, and I can hit a good shot. But the problem is that you lost some speed and some momentum, because instead of creating speed and momentum from staying in your posture and rotating your hips, you had to stand up to get that club on plane. So that'd be the first piece. I would look at your swing on video and see if you're coming down steep. If you're looking from down the line and you see this club pointed anywhere on this side of the golf ball, if this is the golf ball right here and you see that butt end of the club is pointing right there, that's steep. It needs to be pointing at or a little bit outside the golf ball would be ideal. So that'd be piece number one. If you're shallowing out the club, that's great. You're in a great position there in the transition. The next piece that I see most of the time with people who have trouble rotating the hips is because they throw their arms at the golf ball, and because that's the way that they're used to squaring the face. So when you come down steep, you basically, to get that club on plane, you have to stand up and lift the handle, and intuitively you do that. But for some people, they do it because it feels more powerful, and maybe it's just the only way that they know how to square up the face is by coming through and standing up and flipping the club through. If you have to stand up to make room for the club, you can't rotate. So it might be because of the way that you square the face. So you may want to work on what we call turning the handle to square up the face. If I come into contact, and I'm used to coming into contact like this, where I flip the club, I have no forward shaft lean. Look at my wrist. My lead wrist is broken down. my trail wrist is pretty flat. I'm pushing this club through, no forward shaft lean. If I take that and now I get forward shaft lean from rotating my body and I'm getting all the right positions, but I don't change these wrist angles, I still square the face in the same way or try to, what's going to happen is I'm going to leave that club face wide open. So you can see here, the same wrist angles, I'm pushing through and I'm cupped with my lead wrist. That club face is wide open as I'm coming through there. So what do I have to do to square it up? I got to do what we call turning the handle down. You see what I'm doing with my wrists? I'll get closer here. So there I am. I'm open. That's the pushing through, cupped lead wrist, forward shaft lean position. Now I'm going to turn the handle. Look what happened with my wrist now. Now my wrist, my lead wrist has gone from cupped to more in a bowed position. My trail wrist has gone from pretty flat pushing through to more of a bent back position. People have trouble with this because this feels really weak because my trail hand, my dominant hand is pushed back position. It's not in a pushing through powerful position. So that's why a lot of people struggle with it. When you push through, you're overtaking your body. You're swinging in front of your body. You're not going to be able to open your hips no matter what feeling you have, whether you feel like you're squatting down or your knees are pointing, whatever it is. Most likely you're not going to be able to because you're just too used to that flipping through there with the trail hand. So you have to get that turning of the handle down, getting that right feeling so that now I can rotate into contact with a square club face. So all of what I just talked about, that is the move. Everything that I just talked about, the shallow of the club, the squaring of the club face, the turning of the handle, that's all the move. That's the move that all tour players do, basically all tour players do. And that's what allows people to get forward shaft lean and open up the body. Your body is reacting to the position of your club most likely, or what you're used to doing with the club to square it up. Because the most important thing is to get that face square at contact, center face contact, all those things. The most important thing is impact. So you're going to move your body in the way that you know how to make that happen. So it's not just going to be, I'm just going to open my hips more, and then I'm going to do, naturally my hands are going to do what they're going to do. Maybe if you're a beginner golfer, a child might be able to do that. But if you've ingrained these movements over time, you've been playing golf for any period of time, and that's what feels natural to you, you're going to have to change that. It's going to be taking some slow motion reps and things like that. So I'd actually recommend working through the move course. I would guess that's what's going on. Like I said, it's hard, it's impossible for me to know without seeing your swing. But those two right there, the move, not performing the move is the number one reason why people can't open up their hips. It's not because of the way that sometimes it's a weight shift thing. Sometimes they're not getting a proper weight shift. Sometimes it's just lag from the beginning, but also not getting lag is not doing the move. So there's all kinds of other reasons. But the number one thing, I would say 80% of the time, probably at least that, it has something to do with the move. It's either coming down steep or squaring up the face by flipping the club through. It's either one of those things. I imagine if you looked at your swing, you would see one or both of those things in your swing. So take a look at your swing on video, see what's going on there, and then go through the appropriate drills in the move course. If any of you are also in that situation, take a look at your swing on video, and if you see what I'm talking about, go to the move course on the website. Go to the move course, click the house icon at the top of the page. That's going to take you to the home page. Scroll down the home page. You'll see a list of all the courses, and then click on the move to get started. If you're not sure exactly what's going on, I do have an unlimited swing review program. I don't have any spots available right now. In fact, I just opened up some spots. We released it to the waiting list, and it's sold out to the waiting list. So if you don't join the waiting list, that's happened the last 3 times I've opened up spots. If you don't join the waiting list, you most likely won't get a chance to sign up for my swing reviews anyway. So make sure that you join that waiting list so that you're in the group of people that get notified first whenever spots become available. So make sure that you do that. And to do that, all you have to do is go to the top of the page, click Get a Review at the top of the page, and that will take you to the swing review page. If you scroll down on the swing review page, you'll see a picture of me. It's not a very good picture. I was quite a bit fatter in that picture. But you'll see a picture of me, and you'll see on the right-hand side it says Join Queues Waiting. If there's a spot there and you want it, take it. But I'm guessing there isn't going to be a spot there. But it's going to say join the waiting list. Join that waiting list. The next time that we open up spots, you'll get an email. And again, it's first come, first served to the waiting list too. So once you get that email from the waiting list, I'll go there as quickly as you can if you're interested and join the swing reviews. All right. So let's go to the next question. Dave P. asks, my backswing is somewhat flat. My left wrist is slightly bowed at the top. There is no drop yet. My downswing is either on or a bit under the plane, with the shaft pointing in front of the ball, not steep. My swing looks more like a one-plane swing. Should I work with that or try to get my hands higher two-plane? Okay, well, it sounds what you can work with that. That's completely fine. It depends on what's important to you. So if you're swinging more on one plane, which it sounds like you kind of are, if you bring the club back kind of flat and then swing it down on the same plane in the downswing, it's basically a one-plane swing. You know, Mo Norman's famous for having a one-plane swing. And obviously it worked really well for him. But arguably you can be more consistent with a swing like that because you're just bringing it up and down on the same plane. But I will say it's a little bit more difficult to get distance when you do that. So if you imagine here, if I'm bringing this club on a flat plane, so basically it's kind of like that. This is the plane that I'm bringing the club down on, right? This is I'm bringing the club up on. You can see that my arms don't really get above my shoulders here. So if I'm in this kind of position, I don't have a lot of space and time to accelerate this club to create speed. So it's a little bit less conducive to getting speed. So like I said, it depends on what's important to you. If you get your hands higher, more above your shoulder plane, now you have more space and time to accelerate the club. But now in the downswing, I've got to get this club shallowed out. So it has to shallow out no matter what, but it's maybe a little bit easier to shallow it out if you're in a flat kind of swing because it's just bringing the club up on the plane and then down on the same plane. So there's pros and cons to either one. You got to think about what's most important to you. If distance is really important to you, which I think it should be, then I would recommend, trying the two-plane swing. There's actually a great drill in the 20-minute distance fixed course called the skyscraper drill. And that's where Clay talks about punching your knuckles through the sky and getting the nice high hands there. You might find that you get quite a bit more club head speed from there. Now, initially, you may come over the top. You may not swing directly on plane. You may come down a little bit steep, but don't be afraid of that. You're just getting used to getting your hands up there. As you get more used to getting your hands up there, you'll be able to transition and be able to get that club more on plane like you're used to. So don't try the high hands, see that you get more club head speed, and then instantly go away from it because you're seeing the club going in a bad direction in the downswing. I would recommend getting the swing up there, get comfortable with it, and then you'll be able to start getting more comfortable with getting that club to come down plane. So there's a reason why you don't see a lot of people on tour with a one-plane swing or flat swings. It's because you can't hit the ball very far when you do that. It's tough to compete when guys are knocking it 50 yards past you off the tee. It's just tough. So if you're interested in distance, which I think pretty much everyone should be, then I would recommend probably more of a two-plane swing, getting a little bit more vertical. Try that skyscraper drill. It's in the third week of the 20-minute distance fixed course. Very easy to get to the 20-minute distance fixed course. That is if you're looking to raise your club head speed and get some distance, there is absolutely nothing better you can do in the world than the 20-minute distance fixed course. So I'd recommend going to the 20-minute distance fixed course. Go to the top of the page, click the instruction tab. When that expands, you'll see right at the top of the menu there, you'll see 20-minute distance fixed. Click that 20-minute distance fixed. Go to week 3 if you're just interested in the skyscraper drill. That's going to be week 3 of the 20-minute distance fix. But honestly, you should just go through the whole thing. It's a 3-week course. Go through the whole thing. Get that club head speed up there. Gain 25, 30 yards off the tee. Who couldn't use 25, 30 yards? I think everybody could. So highly recommend checking that out and getting yourself some more distance. So Jimmy N says, I can't practice the 20 distance fix. So where should I start? So the Top Speed Golf System is where I would be. I'd be working on the position. So make sure your stable fluid spine's good. I'd be starting there, make sure that's good. And then I would work through the power turn. All of the stuff in the Top Speed Golf System, you don't have to hit into a net or anything you don't have to hit balls. You can just work on the positions until you're able to hit balls. I understand it's still winter in a lot of places. So If it's too cold outside to be able to hit balls or anything like that, you can still do so, or still work through the positions and things like that and get yourself geared up to when you are able to get outside and start hitting balls. All right, so Ed D says, hi Q, just an update, making my way through the straight line release, move, and lag courses as you recommended. Starting to see better and better things. Would you mind demoing the backswing and talk about the sequencing going back? I feel arms, hands, pull the shoulders, then hips, and struggle with a flat backswing when I focus on a shoulder-driven backswing. So likely what you're feeling there as far as a shoulder-driven backswing is you're feeling rotation of your shoulders. You need to feel a lot more lifting, most likely. So that's going to come from your front shoulder muscles. These are deltoids right here, these front ones. So actually you can feel this. If you put your arm or your hand right here on the front of your shoulder and you lift your arm up, see it, you can feel how that muscle gets hard there because it's contracting. That's the muscle that you use to lift your arms up, right? So that's going to help you. It's also your lats back here, but that's what's helping you to lift the club up. So you need to feel more like that's activating. If you are, so here's the golf swing with zero lifting of the club. This is what it would look like. If you had no lifting of the club whatsoever, meaning I didn't use my front deltoids here to lift the club up, it would look something like this. Right? That's the golf swing with no lifting at all. So if I did the golf swing with no rotation, so I didn't turn my hips, I didn't turn my shoulders or anything, and I just lifted up, the golf swing would look something like this. So that's the golf swing with no rotation. It's just lifting of the arms. So sometimes if you break those two apart, it makes you understand how the body is moving a little bit better. So now let's put those together. I'm just going to do the lifting motion. I'm actually going to probably choke up on this club so I don't put it through my my projector screen here. But if I just do the lifting motion and now I add the rotation, now look where I'm at. I'm at a good position at the top of the swing. So that's really what needs to happen there. So probably without seeing your swing, it's tough to tell. But if you are feeling it's just rotation, you're feeling like it's all shoulder rotation, then you're going to end up with a flat swing because you're just trying to turn your shoulders like this. What I would try to feel like, one of the best ways, you actually work on that skyscraper drill that I just talked about. But one of the best ways to kind of get this proper feeling of the club working up is to actually imagine your club head following the target line all the way up. So this club is working outside of your hands. And if you do that, see how I'm lifting up with my shoulders and I'm also rotating. So right now your backswing is more like a merry-go-round. It's just rotation in a horizontal plane. What we want is more like a Ferris wheel, which is lifting and rotation in a vertical plane. Now, it's not going to be that extreme, super vertical. It's still going to be at a tilt, but we want to have that feeling that it's like a Ferris wheel, that it's lifting and rotating on a vertical plane. So it's going to be more like this. I'm going up to the top, and I would just exaggerate it. That's super exaggerated, but I would exaggerate that feeling. So you're going to feel weight going. You can initiate this with the shoulders or the hips, but either way, you need to feel like you're turning your hip back as you're going up, and you need to feel like you are lifting and rotating your shoulders as you're going up to the top. So that's what I would try to feel as you're going up the top. Work on that skyscraper drill that I just talked about. That may help out quite a bit. All right. So Charles Jean, I'll try to answer everybody's questions. I apologize if I don't get to your question, but we may run out of time today. So Charles Z says, practicing stable fluid spine, my nose moves off the line 5 or 6 inches in the backswing, but is back to 1 inch at impact. What is a good way to stop this? Might be straightening my back knee and maybe overturning. So if you are moving off the ball a lot, meaning it sounds like my nose, I'm guessing you're moving off this way, right? So what's happening here is your hips are probably sliding. Your spine might be at the right angle but if you're going like this, then you're not really turning your hips. You're kind of just sliding your hips. We'll see what that looks like. Now, if I show you, if I'm pushing into the ground and rotating my hips back, now I'm not really moving my head 5 or 6 inches off the ball. So feel like you are pushing your hip back. You almost may want to feel like as you're going back that you're pushing your hip, this part of your hip back toward the target that way, and actually feel like you may feel like you're doing this. The reality is that you'll probably be like this, but you want to feel like you're doing that, and that can help you to get into a better position. A lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. If you're doing something, out of sequence or out of it, exaggerate the opposite to get what you want to happen. And then usually you'll get in that better position. So if you're doing this and you're getting that weight on the outside of your foot and you're sliding your hips and you're moving your head way off the golf ball and you're not turning your hips, then exaggerate the opposite. The opposite would be feeling that weight on the inside of my foot, then moving into the heel. I'm pushing my hip back toward the target, and I'm getting more angled away here as I'm coming through. And if you overdo it, then all you have to do is ease off of that feeling a little bit to get to where you want to go. So that's what I'd recommend doing. Really exaggerate that hip pushing back the other way. Feel like you're turning your hips in a barrel as opposed to sliding the hips. Feel like you're turning the hips. Feel that weight on the inside of your foot, that pressure on the inside of your foot. And if it gets on the outside of your foot, that means that you're moving your center of mass away from the target, which is going to end up in that sliding, that moving off the ball too much kind of position. All right, so Ed D says, I'd like to get feedback on my club path while swinging at home. Do you know of any devices that do so short of 12,000 fly scopes? If not, how would you suggest I practice? I tend to come too much into out. So unfortunately, there aren't any devices out there that read club data that are affordable, to my knowledge anyway. I don't know if there's anything out there that reads your club data for less than probably 14, 15,000. You might be able to find something used, like a used flight scope or GC Quad, or not GC Quad, GC2, something like that. It'll have to have the head thing on it if you're getting the GC2, because the GC2 by itself just reads club or ball data, but they have the little head attachment thing that reads club data too. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, you don't need to have these fancy devices to read your club path. You just look at your ball flight and where you're striking it on the club face. And you can also look on video to see if you're swinging in and out. So, Ed, I'm not sure if you were here when I was explaining all that earlier. I'm not going to go through it all again because there's a lot of information. We only have a few minutes left in office hours. But if you want to check out my explanation, someone basically had the exact same question earlier. I'm going to archive this afterwards, and you can watch it in the archived office hours. If you go to the office hours highlights page, shortly after we're done here, I'll have it archived, and you can go and look at that answer earlier in the office hours. All right, so Charles G says, also when practicing the stable and fluid spine, I'm pulling the ball. Could the cause of that be my weight is not shifting forward in sequence behind the transition, or could I keep my back to the target longer to correct this? So the first thing I would look at is if you're pulling the ball with the stable fluid spine, it's probably because you're too vertical. It's hard for me to know without seeing your swing, but it could be if you hang back on your back foot, you'll typically come over the top. If your spine angle is vertical, you'll typically come over the top. So I definitely be looking at those things. Make sure you get that good weight shift. Make sure you get angled away. It'll be a lot easier to swing from the inside. So look at those two things. But Charles, it's hard for me to know without seeing your swing, but it sounds like you're on the right track there. Weight shift, angled away, spine angle. That's going to make it the easiest to swing from the inside. If not, you may want to work on the Never Slice Again course. There's some great drills in there to really exaggerate that feeling. So Tom D says, how much forward bend is too much at address? Thanks. So for everybody's all different shapes and sizes, so there isn't one specific number that is good for everybody. But I think a good rule of thumb is essentially to know how far you should be bending over. And this is basically for any club except the driver, which I'll go over in a minute. Get a little bit of flex in the knees, just be in an athletic position, essentially. Imagine if somebody was going to come up and push you. Would you just stand flat-footed? No, you would kind of brace yourself. So get into an athletic position as if somebody was going to push you, right? Yeah, if you ever did I can't remember what that wrestling was in grade school, where you had to keep your feet in the same spot and you're pushing up against each other. That's the kind of athletic position that you want to be in. So not sure if any of you did that in school, but that's something that I remember doing in school. So a little bit of flex in the knees, and then what you're going to do is you're going to hinge. You're going to have your arms at your side here, and then you're going to hinge at your waist and let your arms hang down until your arms get about 4 to 6 inches in front of your thighs. At that point, stop. Don't keep going and keep those down. But the moment your hands get about 4 to 6 inches in front of your thighs, so that's going to be right there, that's where you should be, right there. So that's with basically every club in the bag except for the driver and maybe the 3-wood a little bit. The reason not for the driver is because it's so much longer. The club is so much longer. So you will stand just a hair upright. So if this was kind of your position from before with an iron, you're going to stand just a little bit more upright, and then you're going to reach just a little bit more for the club. So your driver position is going to look something like this, right? So that's the good general rule of thumb. Now, that doesn't mean that you might hit the ball a little bit better if you're bent over more or more upright. That's just a good general area to be in. So try that out. That's going to get you in a nice, comfortable position at address for most people. Unless you're used to being fully bent over or super upright, it's going to feel like a pretty comfortable, powerful position for you. All right, so Thomas F. And we're just going to answer these last couple questions here between Carol and Thomas. So Thomas F. says, if the long clubhead arc is so crucial for clubhead speed, how can Tony Finau get 110 mile per hour with a half backswing? So that's a good question. I get this every now and then. So couple things. So Tony Finau is a pretty tall guy. He's a pretty big guy. He's 6'2", 6'3". He might even be a little bit taller than that. He's also very, very athletic, and he's also very strong and very powerful athlete. Like he's a top athlete. Like he's a very, very, very good athlete. Like if he wanted to play some basketball, he probably could. Like he's a very, very good athlete. Okay, so that's part of it. It's the same reason. It's the same reason why a child wouldn't be able to swing as fast as an adult, right? They're not as fast or as strong or as big as someone says as an adult typically. So that's a big reason why. Another reason why is because of something that's called neural adaptation. So Tony Finau has been swinging as hard as he could. He grew up swinging as hard as he could, and he was building what we would call like a jet fuel engine. There's actually a cool story that he talks about that I've heard him talk about in an interview. I can't remember if it was Faraday or something like that. But anyway, he talked about this in an interview where his brother is actually another really good golfer who's a professional golfer. I can't remember. He might be playing on the Korn Ferry Tour. But him and his brother would be in the garage, and they would have this this mattress set up vertically in the garage, and he would be on one side of the mattress, and his brother would be on the other side of the mattress, and they were hitting balls into the mattress from each side of it, and they were just trying to get that hardest and biggest sound they could make whenever they hit that mattress, just the biggest thump that they could get every time they could do it. So he was swinging as hard as he possibly could. Now, the other thing is that it might be a possibility why he has a shorter swing is because he was in his garage. So if you ever swung in your garage before, if you have a garage that has like the rafters that are right there, sometimes you can't take a full swing because you're going to hit them. So part of that might be that the reason why he's more comfortable with that shorter swing is because he was hitting in his garage for so many years. So that's that neural adaptation part of it. Clay talks about this in the 20-minute distance fix. Basically, swinging as hard as you can, he gets more comfortable with swinging harder and harder. He's recruiting the muscles, and the fast twitch muscles and the contraction is greater with those muscles, and they're more powerful to get more clubhead speed. So that's a part of it as well. So that's the main thing there. The other thing is that actually not too long ago, I'm not on Instagram, so I didn't see this, but Robin, one of our instructors here, he's on Instagram. He's avid on Instagram. You can actually follow him. I think he runs our Top Speed Golf Instagram. But anyway, he mentioned to me that he saw Tony Finau on Instagram. He posted a video recently after the long drive guys, and Tony Finau went out and he's like, well, I wonder what would happen if I would get a longer swing. And he swung like 130 some miles per hour. getting what you would look like a normal kind of getting the parallel kind of swing. So just because, Tony Finau swings 115 miles per hour with a short swing, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to. But it also means that Tony Finau could swing 130 some miles per hour on tour if he wanted to lengthen his swing. So, you might go from, working through some of our distance drills and things like that. You might go from 90 miles per hour to 100 miles per hour, where for Tony, he might go from 115 to 125. It's not going to be the same for everybody. Everyone's got built different ways. Everyone's, got different strength levels and power levels than other people. So, genetics have a part of it too. So there are things that are going on there. So you can't look at Tony Finau swing and think, if my swing looks exactly like that and I do exactly what Tony Finau does, I'll swing 115 miles per hour too. And actually, Tony Finau swings like 120 some miles per hour on tour. That's actually his average club head speed. So, keep that in mind, when you're working on these things. So, last question here from Carol N says, I can hit my driver and hybrids on the center of the face, but I'm hitting my irons close to the hosel. Any suggestions? You mentioned the move a few minutes ago. Would that help? It's possible it could help. It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but what I would recommend doing if you're hitting anything off the hosel is to immediately try to strike it off the toe. I know that may seem trivial, but keep it simple. You don't have to make things really, really complicated. It's just not necessary. Try to hit it off the toe as much as you possibly can. And what that will likely do, you set up to the ball the way you normally do. If you line up the ball in the center of the face, set it up there if that's what you normally do. And then intentionally try to hit it off the toe of the club. What will likely happen is you'll get it more in the center of the face. Now, if you're still a little bit in the heel, exaggerate it even more. Get out of your comfort zone. Exaggerate it even more. Now, if you actually hit the ball a little bit in the toe, then just ease off of it a little bit. But you got to keep doing that until what you feel is actually real. That's what I'd recommend doing. It's going to be as simple. And over time, you're going to get recalibrated again. You're going to start to hit the ball off the toe when you're trying to, and then essentially you're calibrated and you kind of go back to trying to hit it in the center of the face. Now, there could be things going on in your swing and the move. If a lot of times hitting it off the hosel or hitting off the heel, a big reason why people do that is because they swing too much from the inside. Because when you swing too much from the inside, that hosel's headed right for the golf ball. So that could be, if you work on the move, because the moving involves shallowing out the club. If you are already shallowed out and then you shallow it out more, you're just going to swing more from the inside. So the move may actually not be a good thing for you to work on, but it could be the good thing to work on if you are coming into contact and you're doing this action where you're moving your hips toward the golf ball because you're coming through and this is how you square the face. Again, it's hard for me to know without seeing your swing, but if you see that you're already shallowed out and the club's coming under too much underplaying and you're hitting it off the hosel, that shallowing part of the move is not something you're going to need to work on. But if you see that you're like this and then you have early extension as you're coming into contact, meaning my hips are moving toward the ball. So when my hips move toward the ball, I'm losing the space that I have for the club to work through there, for my hands to move through there, and that can move my hosel closer to the club. If you're seeing that, then you may want to work on getting the club face squared earlier so that you can rotate and clear space for your hands to move through. Like I said, it's hard for me to know without seeing your swing. Take a look on video, see what you see there. You can make the determination yourself based on my answer there. And if you'd like me to take a look at your swing, like I said, I do offer unlimited swing reviews. I don't have any spots available right now, but if you join the waiting list, we will send an email to you whenever I open up spots. And then I can look at your swing and tell you, hey, yep, you need to work on this or that. I can tell you exactly what you need to do. Like I said, all I can do here is kind of guess based on what you're telling me. So thanks everybody for joining me on the office hours today. We'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Until then, everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time.